Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Redesigning eLearning for All Learners. I'm Mary Carnahan with the Office of eLearning, and I will be hosting and producing today's webinar. And I will get to our presenters in just a few minutes, but first I want to cover a few housekeeping items. I have muted all lines, so please leave your line muted throughout the call. This will limit distracting background noise. The chat box is open. Hopefully you see that on the right side of your screen. If you don't, you might have to click on the chat button at the top of the right side of your screen. Please use that chat box throughout the call to share ideas and to ask questions of our presenters. And as Kim already modeled here for us, please introduce yourself in that chat box. Give everyone else an idea of who is on the call today, especially our presenters. It might help them in some specifics that they might be sharing. And as you're introducing yourself, I suggested that you share how you're using online learning in your classroom. You might also share how you're adapting your eLearning, if you already are, if you're adapting some of your online learning to make it more accessible to all of your learners, or maybe you're here today because you're not sure how to do that, and that's great. We want people who are on all levels here today. So please introduce yourself in the chat box, but keep your line muted and use that chat throughout the call. So we have some other upcoming professional development opportunities available. We have a webinar coming up. Our next one that is currently scheduled is next month on the 21st, and it is going to be about Symbaloo. So if you are interested in learning more about Symbaloo or how you can use it for your own organization or in your classroom, please join us for that webinar. We're still working out the details, so you can't register yet for that, but I'm getting information for that webinar all put together, so you should see that coming out soon. Oh, and let me mention, as I'm seeing messages pop up in the chat, make sure when you share a comment in the chat box that you select everyone from that Send To drop-down. It defaults to send it to only me, so I see your comments, but everybody else doesn't. So make sure that you do that, and you may have to do that later in the call again when we change to our guest presenters. It may then default to send to them. So just make sure that in that Send To drop-down it says everybody or everyone. The next thing that we have ongoing, and watch for more webinars. I'm looking at a couple of other topics to schedule in the next 2 months, so just be watching our website for more topics upcoming. And also if there's a topic that you would like to see discussed in a webinar, please share that with me. I would love to have suggestions. Twitter, as you're using Twitter on a daily basis or weekly basis or however often you use it, please make sure you're using the eLearn hashtag so that you can connect with the very large group that tweets throughout the day and shares ideas. This is a great resource. We also have Twitter chats every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and this week's is the final in a digital leader series, and the topic is stakeholder leaders. So feel free to hop into that, and that's a good intro, a good starter Twitter chat. It's slow, it doesn't move too fast, and it's easy to keep up with, so we would love to see you there. Another thing that we have upcoming is our book club. We do 3 book clubs a year, and we will be beginning our winter book club, because I guess it will still be winter, on February 6th. We'll be reading Launch, Using Design Thinking to Boost Creativity and Bring Out the Maker in Every Student. So we will be beginning that book club on February 6th. Plenty of time to get the book, either buy the paperback copy or download the Kindle version onto your e-reader or iPad. And that is a blog, so you can do it anytime, anywhere. Easy to keep up with, and we award up to 20 PGP points for that. So if you're looking for some great ways to connect with other educators and also a way to get PGP points, this is your thing. Speak Up, the Speak Up survey is still open. Typically it has closed by now, but they have extended the end of this, the close of this, a couple of times now, and it looks like now it's going to be open until January 27th. So make sure your voice is heard and fill out the Speak Up survey at the website that is shared here. You can also get to that from our website. But this is just a great way to share your opinion and what's going on in your school. And those responses make a difference at the federal level, and your local school also gets those results. So hopefully they are also used at the local level. And without further ado, we have two presenters with us today from IU, from Indiana University. So Julia and Megan, I am going to turn it over to you guys to introduce yourselves and move into our topic for today.
Very good. Thank you so much. We're really happy to be here with you today. This is Julia Sanders, and I work with the eLearn team at Indiana University. Our job at the university is to provide instructional design support and instructional technology support for the instructors taking their courses and programs online. We have a small but mighty team, and we work broadly across all 7 campuses at Indiana University.
Awesome. I'm Megan Tolan. I work for the School of Education at IUPUI. My job is to help faculty and then K-12 teachers use technology, integrate, and develop some content for blended and online learning spaces. Is everyone able to see this slide okay?
No, Megan, we don't see your presentation.
That's what I was afraid of. Didn't get my option to share like last time. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, there it is. All right, let's get started. I'm sorry. So today we're going to talk about universal design for learning and why that matters, creating accessible content. And then we're going to show you 7-ish tips on how to do it. I will say that I was really surprised about how easy and quick it could be when I started this learning process. And then we'll go over some questions and show you a few resources. And then we'll be done. Hopefully we won't go over it all. The whole why, this whole what happens here matters. I love this picture because obviously when we're teaching in our face-to-face classrooms, we see these awesome spaces. They're filled with love. They say, I value you, you're important to me, I want you to feel safe. I'm so sorry. We spend time here, and I want you to feel like this is a good space for learning. Yet sometimes we don't do this in our online spaces, and they tend to look like this, right? And we don't want to turn students off because we aren't creating spaces that are comfortable and exciting and engaging for them. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of why this accessibility matters. Why does UDL, Universal Design for Learning, matter? Because we want our students to feel just as comfortable in our online spaces as they do in our face-to-face spaces. So we're going to talk about about how to do that and how do we get all of our kids in a space where that they're learning and they're comfortable and we can move forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Julia now.
Okay. So I think I love this quote because, you know, thinking about our team for sure is always thinking about design first. When we work with the instructors here at Indiana University, and I work with all the different disciplines, public health, the law school, the School of Education, just really the School of Social Work, all the different schools here at IU, it really starts with the design. You know, if you're thinking about learning and helping students maximize their learning, it really all comes back to the design. And certainly the technology can help students with the learning, but getting the design right is first and foremost of everything that we do with the professors here at IU, and sometimes that's challenging. Often we are working with folks who are so gifted in their fields and in their subject matter, but they haven't had a lot of training in design, and certainly making the jump to taking classes in the digital world to online classes has been challenging for many, both with the technology and with, you know, going all the way back and pulling back and looking at the design for classes and how the online space is sometimes a little bit more challenging for them. So the design first and foremost. And I think often when we're looking at learning and maximizing learning for students, looking at cognitive load and really keeping the focus on, you know, what can we do? And there's a lot, Megan and I have a lot of really simple, easy things to share with you about how can you help students maximize, enhance their learning, and reduce the cognitive load for them. So here is actually two examples from some of the work that I've done here at the university. Actually, the one on the left is a fake. It's a mock-up that we did. We pulled a couple different things from a couple different courses. The one on the right, where it says Attire for Hire, the do's and the don'ts, this is from a series at IU created by the academic advisors and the career counselors called Career Edge. And knowing how college students browse websites and knowing how they read those pages, our graphic developer created this Attire for Hire page, helping students on the left. Yes?
I lost your audio, so I was just a little concerned there. I want to make sure you're okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know why that faded out. The page on the left is really an amalgamation of a couple different courses of things that we see. It looks like a wall of words to me. And it's just, you know, for the learner, maybe perhaps a little intimidating. There's so much there. There's not tons of places for their eye to go to between the content chunks. So when you're looking at cognitive load, you know, thinking about a student's working memory and that old theory that students can hold, you know, plus or minus 3 to 5 things in their working memory. And so if you think about what you really want them to hang on to, the Attire for Hire page really makes that very easy. And the other page, the Enhance eLearning, improving the visuals to enhance eLearning, doesn't, because there's so many places on that page for my eye to go to where, you know, what's important. Is the important part buried at the bottom? Is it on the front part of that page? So really working and thinking about and designing with cognitive load in mind.
I like to go, I mean, this isn't scientific at all, but I like to go with the fact that if I don't want to read it, my students don't want to read it. So you have to be really careful, like that left side page, as Julia mentioned, that like I just don't even want to read it. Maybe it's because it's Tuesday afternoon and I'm just tired, but that doesn't catch my eye at all. So, all right, now we're going to get into some tips.
And on this, especially if you're looking at IU, we are in Canvas learning management system, and so we're basically designing web pages in the learning management system. Looking at font and color make a big difference about providing information and how students retain that. For example, font size and font type, Megan's example at the top here, avoid Comic Sans and handwriting fonts. These are very pretty, and with Canvas, we have very limited access to fonts. In fact, we only have the one that comes with Canvas, which I was in a meeting the other day, and someone said, hey, can we have different fonts? When you're working in a digital environment, the sans serif fonts are a lot easier for your eye to read, and there's a lot less processing going on in the brain. And so the sans serif fonts are really the best when you're looking at a web platform. And as far as size, thinking about eye strain with reading on a digital device, whether it's on a phone or an iPad or a laptop, probably about 13-point font is a good size to shoot for if you're building on an e-learning platform. If you're thinking about a PowerPoint that you're showing, I suggest 24-point font for maximum visibility. Megan, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I'm torn because I just love that top one. I know it's so hard, and that's, like you said, teachers asking for different fonts. It is beautiful, but is it the easiest to read? And obviously we want our students to be able to access the content, to comprehend the content. We don't want to get in the way, right? The technology of the design shouldn't get in the way of our content. So.
Well, and it makes your eye, from the eye to the brain and pulling that into your working memory, it makes your brain work harder trying to decipher that handwriting font too. So
it does look pretty sometimes. I have to give people credit for that.
On this slide, we're seeing font choice, color contrast, and this is something that, especially here at the university, that we do keep in mind. In Canvas, in our learning management system, we have access to all the colors that you see here, from very dark ones on the far right to the lighter ones on the left. And I'm lucky because on my team, I do have a graphic developer / graphic designer, and she is very skilled at putting colors together in visuals that she puts together for us. But knowing that all learners need to be able to access whatever our team designs for the faculty, and that some students may be accessing the material with a screen reader, that we pay a lot of attention to our color contrast. There's a fair number of folks who are color blind. For example, my husband does not see green or tan colors, and so for him on the far left, the pale green text would not show up. He would not read that, and in the middle, he wouldn't see the dark green text. Those colors just would not show up for him. And then on the far left, you see at the top of that example, it says fail, and then there's a good and there's a best. Later on in this webinar, Megan and I have a tool to show you, and it's free and it's really easy to use. I'm not a graphic developer by any sense, and you can put your colors into this to see if there's enough contrast for them to be read on the web, and we'll show you that later on. It's kind of a fun thing to play with.
It is, and something to keep in mind, I'm just going to piggyback on you here, Julia, is that even on monitors, some colors, especially those light, and there's not a lot of contrast, depending on the monitor, students might not be able to see it because of their monitor resolution and the quality of the monitor that they're looking at. So even if there are no visual impairments there, sometimes the technology we're using can cause issues if that's not at the right level. And I think I see a ton of red text all the time when I'm looking at content teachers create when I'm out and about. So I think that's that was kind of eye-opening for me. I know I totally used colored font when I first started teaching in a blended space. So I'm like, oh gosh, think of all the things I did wrong. But it's good to learn, right, and move forward.
That's right. When we work with, here at IU, when we work with the accessibility teams, that is one thing that they try to get across to the faculty, to use a color other than red if you have something that you want to highlight, to do something else to that text to bring attention to it, because red is one of those colors that a lot of people have trouble with. So good point, Megan. And on this slide, this is something where you can see how hard it is to read. When you have the dark text on the example at the right, the two kids down at the bottom by the pencil and the apple, the wording there is almost impossible to read against the darkness, and the same with some of the lighter text too. Some of it just doesn't show up. What Megan said a few minutes ago about folks' monitors and students' monitors being, that is true. I was sitting next to our graphic designer the other day, and I asked her a question about one of the projects we were working on the colors for it, and I said, I'm not sure about this, and she's like, well, it looks fine on mine. And when we put our two laptops next to each other, she was on an Apple and I was on a PC, there was quite a bit of difference in the actual color there. So just thinking about what's best for readability, helping students not have to wade through, not making their task more difficult by like down at the bottom with the dark color on the dark lettering on the dark color there, but how can we, streamline that so that they can really get to the thing that we want them to learn?
Yeah, I think we see this a lot with in any platform, Google Docs or Word or PowerPoint, when we're highlighting text, to bring attention to it, to be very aware of the highlight color that we're using. Obviously, we like that neon yellow. I think that's pretty standard. But if we are using a darker highlight, to use that lighter font, or vice versa. If you're doing a lighter highlight, to use the darker font. It just makes a world of difference. And there's lots of places that this happens in. So I think this is pretty powerful, especially when we're doing graphics too, on top of PowerPoint presentations or whatever you're creating it.
If your school is using Canvas Learning Management System, and I apologize, this is not a commercial for Canvas, it's just the one that we are using here. When I was teaching at Brownsburg High School, we had a couple different learning management systems. Canvas actually has a page that their developers have put together, and they will tell you which of the colors that they offer as font colors really work best on the web. So if you are using Canvas, check that out sometime.
Thanks, Julia. So headings and hierarchy, this is something that I'm just going to call myself out on. I have just learned about this in the last 6 months, and Julia can attest this, I get so mad at it because it doesn't always look the way I want it to look. So using headings allows for a clean design. It's organized. You can do this inside of Word, PowerPoint, Google Docs. You can do it in Canvas. You can do it in PDF files. It's called types in PDF, but it allows you to really structure out your course or your content. So you can see that there's a heading, and then there's obviously this is some text. You can see that picture on the left. That's a screenshot from Microsoft Word. A couple things, it allows your students to navigate quickly. Obviously that bigger, bolder font, that's going to say, hey, this is the start of a chunk. This is the start of a chunk. It allows us to chunk our content into an organized manner. This is huge for students or parents who use screen readers. It allows them to navigate through and click through a course or a document and see the headings, right? And to see, okay, I need this piece or I need this piece. Maybe they listen to the whole thing the first time and then they're like, oh, I want to go back and listen to the second chunk. If it's not divided using the headings or a hierarchy structure, they're going to have to re-listen to that whole page to find that one piece of information that they want. So guilty as charged, I was always just changing the font size and making it bold or underlining. That's okay until you know better, I guess. So now you know that you can use headings in the hierarchy structure to really help your students access the content and to keep it streamlined. I think it's, organized. I'm a math and science person, so I like structure and I like linear thinking. So this headings and hierarchy is very, very helpful. So you can access it in Word at the very top of your toolbar. The same thing in the picture on the right is from Google. So next to the font type, you can see the structure, the hierarchy structure there.
Megan, you're right. This is so important. I have had a fully visually impaired student in my class, and watching her try to sort through a multi-page document to try to find something like a syllabus, it was quite a challenge. And with the headings, she wanted the information about the grading, or about a particular part of that document, she could just jump to that part. Otherwise, she really had to sift through all of it, and it was quite unwieldy. Good tips.
Yeah, thanks. I know that as my K-12 teacher self, this was so far off my radar, and I know that some people might not want to do it. It is a little bit of an extra step, but I think it's habit forming. So once you get into the habit of using the headers and being okay with the structure and the hierarchy, that it just becomes second nature and into something you're doing. So that if you ever did have a student that needed that assistance, or a parent that needed that assistance, then you know your content is already ready for them, as opposed to having to backtrack and recreate everything you've done in a digital space so that they have access to it.
Well, a good suggestion for that, and one of the things my team does when we're working with groups of instructors, is to make a template of maybe a syllabus or some kind of course document, and then share that out so that folks can just put their information in there, and it's already formatted with the headings and the hierarchy.
Thanks, Julia. So this next idea, left align, is like what I think about all of this, and I might be a little repetitive here, so none of it is like earth-shattering information. It's just like very simple things, and it's the why behind it. So left align, coming back to that cognitive load, when we're designing content for students to read, obviously our eyes, we read left to right, and we move straight down the page. So when we're putting content into any type of digital space, or paper, but digital specifically, keeping things on that left align is easier for the eye. It's easier for our brains and students' brains to process that information. When we center align text, where our eyes are having to figure out where the line starts, and it might not seem that hard, but it actually does make a difference for our brain. It's less brain power that we're using. And as a teacher, I'd rather have them putting their brain power towards what the content is saying and getting what they need out of it, as opposed to just trying to read it. So it's just something as simple as that. I think this is a big one, especially for the K-12 teachers I work with. There's a lot of like centering, and they want it to look pretty, but pretty doesn't always mean easy. So I think that's just something we have to keep considering as we're moving forward and creating digital content. I know, some schools have online classes, some are not, some are blended, some are just getting into the technology world and using an LMS, but these are just little things that we can do. And I will have to say again that I sometimes want to do things centered, but I try not to. So I feel all of your, oh my gosh, I don't know if there's any teachers in here, I can't see everyone now, but I don't want it to feel like you're doing all of these things wrong, although that's how I felt when I started learning about all of this. So it's okay, we will get through it together. Just want you to know. Another tip that, again, is pretty powerful and pretty simple is using descriptive hyperlinks. The first two examples I see all the time. So to learn more, blah, 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 here's your URL. Now, if I am creating a document for students to have online and then in paper, I do want them to have the URL there so that they could access it if they don't have a digital version of the document. But if they are able to click on it, the hyperlinks we want to be descriptive. So that bottom image where it says visit the Field Museum's website, when we're creating hyperlinks, we want to highlight the text that's descriptive and be very purposeful with that. We want to avoid learn more, click here, or just that plain URL. So it should just be really clean, and students should know exactly where it's going to take them. Julia, do you have anything to add on the descriptive hyperlink side?
No, I think you said it well, Megan. Just link to words that describe the link's destination, and that's really a help to everyone so they know, when you click here, where is that taking me? And on the other side, my student who was visually impaired, it was very painful in a way for her because she had to hear the screen reader read the HTTPS, and then you know how sometimes the URLs are extremely long and they're seem to be random letters and numbers. She had to listen to all that, and so I echo you. Have the link say where the destination is.
So the top one with the URL, again, if you're going to have it printed out and the students will not have access, it is okay to have the URL there so they can actually access it if they're typing it in. But if it's a clickable document or a document they're getting digitally, then we do want to use that descriptive URL. Another thing is being consistent. I think this is so big and probably overlooked, but we have a couple of examples of just about structure. So how are we organizing our content? Are we putting it in numerical order? You don't have to put it in numerical order, but you can see on the picture on the left, we see like 2.0, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. We, as children, learn the basics of counting, so students are able to follow that. We also want to keep with consistent naming conventions. So you'll see from one week to the next, we still say what you'll learn. We don't go what you'll learn, overview, agenda, a lot of words that are obviously kind of synonymous with one another, but we're very specific with our text. To the point where 3.1 and 3.2 on that picture on your right, you see blog, overcoming issues, first draft, blog, overcoming issues, final draft. So being consistent with how we're organizing our courses, being consistent with how we're naming assignments and content for our students is super powerful. And we want them to be able to easily navigate our course, to get what we need them to get. And I think my biggest thing here is just we don't want it to be a hurdle, right? Our learning management systems, doing things digitally shouldn't make our content harder for students. We want it to help them. Another way to help with students here, and I'm talking again about cognitive load, is using signaling. These icons, this is a key of all the icons used in a course. So students know when they're creating or looking at new content or trying to learn something new, these are familiar icons for them, so they can signal to students when things are occurring, or if they just want to look at an assignment or they're looking for the calendar icon, they can learn new items without having to learn a new structure. So again, being consistent, we like these icons for signaling, and we really like when you give the icon key. So that's what this is here. As you can see, these are all the icons that we're going to use, and here's what they all mean. And leave that in a place that students can access at a later date, just in case they aren't comfortable or don't remember. Having that key for students is really powerful.
And the instructors too, Megan, that was something that as our team worked on this icon key, we had a group of faculty, and there were a couple people that said, well, how are you using, whatever it was, one of the icons, what are you using the head with the brain in for it? And it took our graphic designer, it gave her pause for a minute, because for her it was very clear. She had designed these and she had thought, oh, everybody understands this. And so coming up with the key just really helped make sure that everybody was on the same page. And as you said, less navigating, really concentrating on the main focus instead of working really hard to navigate through a course.
Yeah, it is really powerful. I like that little brain icon.
Yeah.
Okay. So, does anyone have any questions?
I just saw one in the chat pod, and it was about, does Canvas offer consistent signal icons? And I was getting ready to type back, yes, they do have some, but they're more for actions such as download or preview. There are sets of icons like Megan just showed on the web that are free access to those, and you can do a quick search for those and turn those up. There are some sites that do Creative Commons, and they do let people do those. Those aren't, you can't, unless you have like Adobe Illustrator, you probably can't manipulate and change those, but they are a basic set. So if you want like a pencil or a computer, there are some sets like that. And Canvas does have some, but they're just basic for functions within Canvas. Good question.
You do. I like to use the icons as well. You can find some that are Creative Commons out there if you like would to create a set of icons. I think it'd be really, oh, thank you, Kim. The Now Project is what I was going to suggest. You could share within your building or district or even just department if you're in a secondary setting, that if everyone in the whole school, if all of students, teachers were using the same icons, and you think that would just make everything be a little bit easier for students as well. Holly, you could probably share them via Canvas Commons. you might be able to add them on the back end, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyone else have any questions for us?
We're happy to talk about any of the courses that we've worked on or some victories and challenges that we run into designing for the e-learning platform.
It's very quiet. You either overwhelmed everyone or you provided, just the perfect information.
Well, I hope it's a second. I just know when I started digging into this and Julia was educating me and telling me that what I wanted I couldn't do, or I shouldn't, not couldn't, but I shouldn't do, that I felt like I was just doing everything wrong. I just don't, it's okay. And this is, even in the higher ed world, has been relatively new as far as getting people on board and trying to think about these things when we're designing content for students. I mean, it's just going so fast, and I just want everyone to know that it's going to be okay. So.
Yeah, and again, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what's not in your head. Like, we're seeing it as we see it, but starting to think about all learners and and if we can make some general rules, like don't, use these colors, don't use these colors, use this type of bolding, this type of heading. So if we can get some general changes that work, for the greater good, then that's helpful too.
Yeah, I agree.
And starting with small steps, right? When I worked in a high school, a very large high school, I had someone inside school when I had a student who needed accommodations would take care of those for me. When I moved over to IU, and suddenly I was responsible for making sure the courses that I designed were accessible for all the students who were in them. I had to get up to speed on that too, and it's small things, thinking about maybe using the headers when you make a document, whether it's an agenda for a meeting or the open house brochure for when your parents come to that Meet the Teacher night, or a PowerPoint. And just, once you start doing those, then you do something else and gradually adding some of these things in. Megan, did we have someone in the chat mentioned WebAIM is an excellent resource, and actually here at IU, our accessibility team, that is a place that they point people to a lot. They have great job aids, so if you haven't used headings in Word, they have and it's one page. I love their job aids because they're one page, and when I work with busy instructors and there's always one more thing, if I can give them a one-pager on something, then it's more likely that they'll have time to read that and look at it. WebAIM, the resource that Megan has up on the screen, their color contrast checker, this is what the graphic designer on my team uses, and she just puts the number for the color in there, and those are easy to get. I am by trade a secondary ed teacher, and it's easy to look up these. I don't have any special graphic design training, but to get the number of the color, which is usually the hex number or the RGB number, and put that in there, and then it generates, WebAIM generates whether that color contrast is good, or if it's a fail, or if it's okay, but then they may give you some suggestions about how to make it better. And this is the resource that the web developers and the folks here at IU use, so we don't use some fancy expensive tool. We use this from WebAIM.
I'm going to piggyback. Kim had commented in the chat that closed caption. So we didn't talk about closed captions today. We also didn't talk about alt text for what the pictures say. So if you're looking for a challenge and you want to do a little bit more, you could also look into closed captioning videos for students and what if a student were to hover or a screen were to tell us what the picture did, what are we having that on there? So those are just a few other things to think about as well. So thank you, Kim. Does anyone else have any questions for us this afternoon? We do have one more resource. Oh, go ahead, Julia. Was
no,
that you?
Go ahead. That was me. That was Mary. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mary. We do have one more resource for everyone. I'm going to let Julia hit on this because it's her team that designed it. So.
All right, typing and talking, not always good at. This is a Teaching Online series at IU, and because this was not clickable, like Megan said a few minutes ago, I did put the web address in it. It's http://go.iu.edu/TOS, and TOS stands for Teaching Online Series. This is a series of modules that was built in conjunction with the Teaching Center and our eLearn team in Canvas. So if you're interested to see what Canvas looks like, you can check it out. And it's for anyone who wants to develop an online course or teach an online course. And actually, there's a lot there, too, for just teaching in general. The developing an online course takes you all the way from backwards design and thinking about how do you assess people if you're teaching fully online, and what kind of activities can you do, what kind of technology is out there, what tools do what. And the teaching an online course, how do you make sure that the instructor has presence in that course and that you really get a sense that there's a person teaching and not just a series of assignments for the students. So there's some really cool things in there. One of the things that I like about the series that I feel like it did well, the last page in each module is a resource page. So there's lots of journal articles if you like to read those, but there's lots of very practical, easy to access resources. There's some tips in there about good technology tools, many of which are free. And there are some activities. So if you were kind of the impetus behind this for the people here at IU, we use Canvas to get them used to using the learning management system, and then we use some of the tools inside Canvas, such as the discussion board or the quiz tool, also to get them used, kind of a sneaky way of getting them used to using those tools. So it's a great series, and you can just take out parts. There is a module in there just on accessibility, and there's one coming on universal design, so all kind of good stuff.
Awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, I don't think we have anything else for everyone. So thank you for joining us. I know it's a crazy time of year as semesters get started, and a lot of people had yesterday off, so you're just kind of getting back in the swing of things. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us as well. We'll stick around for a couple more minutes.
Well, thank you both very much. Thank you, Megan and Julia. This was really great information. And like I said in a comment earlier, it got me thinking more about the web pages that I work on for our site. So some things that I'll be thinking about what changes I can make to make it more accessible and user-friendly as we move forward. So thank you both. And I also mentioned in the chat, if y'all refer back to it, Julia and Megan and other members of the team hosted, or they did our Twitter chat. They hosted the Twitter chat this past week, and I linked to the archive from that Twitter chat. And they also took over our Instagram a couple of weeks ago. So those two things I linked to, so you could refer back to those and see what additional information was shared there that might be helpful to you moving forward. Also, I recorded this webinar, so if you want to go back and watch it or listen to it again, or want to recommend it to a coworker, well, hopefully would have it by the middle of next week. I would have it archived and available on our site. And you can get to those different things through the links that are here on our on the page right now on the screen that you're seeing, just different ways to keep in touch with us. Oh, and thank you, Julia just said in the chat that the Instagram, they shared the web aim color checker in action in the video that we couldn't, that wouldn't work in our webinar. So go back and take a look at that. So that is all that I have for you all today. So again, thank you to Megan and Julia for joining us today and sharing some really great information. And thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to learn a little something that hopefully you can take back to your schools and your classrooms and to start working on making your web pages and your e-learning opportunities that you have for your students more accessible. So thank you all very much and have a wonderful Tuesday evening.